Good morning and welcome to CABE's July webinar Wednesday. Today we'll be talking scaffolding with a webinar from the National Access and Scaffolding Confederation titled, Is My Scaffolding Safe? My name is Shanika and I'm your moderator today. If you're watching us live, you can use the side panel to send in your questions. The speaker will host a Q&A section at the end of the webinar. Alternatively, you can get in touch with us via the social links now on screen. Let me introduce today's webinar speaker, Dennis Braithwaite. Dennis is the NASC's Technical Advisor, and his remit includes the provision of health and safety and technical guidance, and advice to industry, management and operational teams, sharing of industry knowledge and best practice. Dennis is an incorporated mechanical engineer and chartered health and safety practitioner, and has worked within the scaffolding, access, construction and industrial services sectors for more than 30 years. So I'm going to ask Dennis to take over now and we'll begin shortly. Over to you, Dennis.
Right. Right, good morning everyone. Hopefully you can see that screen. I'm sure within your businesses, you will from time to time require to use scaffolding. You could use it for access, you could use it for support, maybe some shoring, bridging, etc. So you use it for many different applications. But when you sort of engage a scaffolding contractor, how do you know that the scaffolding that you've procured is actually safe, that it's built to the right standard, etc., etc. So what I'm going to do is basically go through just the basics of what you ought to be looking for to see that the scaffolding that you've got is how it should be. So first of all, if you can just introduce the NASC, we're a national trade body that covers access and scaffolding in the UK. We're established in 1945, and we now have some 400 members that are leading contracting firms, the scaffolding suppliers and manufacturers, designers. We have some international members and some other categories. Nearly 80 years after we've been founded, we're still trying to maintain and raise the standards of scaffolding, and our objectives really is just driving the scaffolding industry forward. So we try to set the standards for scaffolding. We do set the standards for scaffolding. And we do it in various ways. We have a number of standing committees. They cover technical, health and safety, security, etc., etc. We have produced 100+ titles of guidance documents that cover all aspects of scaffolding and access. We have a minimum criteria for our members. So contractors, suppliers and designers have to actually come up to a certain standard, and we actually audit them on that on a regular basis, usually a biannual audit, to ensure that they are maintaining the standards that we believe the industry requires. We produce annual accident statistics so that we can actually see whether we're actually progressing or otherwise, and if that's not the case, what do we need to do to try and help things along, help things to improve. We focus on innovation. Anything new in the industry we want to bring to everyone's attention, and that includes equipment and practices, basically. If we can make things safer, then that's what we're about. We engage with the construction industry, Build UK, HSE, SEN, UEG, IOSH, etc., really. The NASC also has information membership, so anyone can join on the basis if they want sort of information, whatever we put out, and we'll put out to the information members. So, is my scaffolding safe? How do you know that it's safe? I'm going to concentrate on the 3 basic requirements for safe scaffolding. So firstly, let's look at compliant structures. How do we know that the structure that has been erected for us, how do we know that it is compliant, it has been, sort of erected correctly and to the right specifications? So let's start with the health and safe, the health at work regulations. With the work at height regulations. Schedule 3 says that strength and stability calculations for scaffolding shall be carried out unless a note of calculations covering the structural arrangements contemplated is available, or it is assembled in conformity with the generally recognised standard. So what does that mean? How can we ensure that the scaffolds constructed are to a design or a standard configuration? What's a standard configuration? Well, we produce a document, or a suite of documents actually, that's called TG20. And this has sort of become recognised as the code of practice for tube and fitting scaffolding. The suite of documents provides a series of standard designs for commonly used scaffolds. And this forms the generally recognised standard configuration as required by the regulations. So scaffold details are specified on TG20 compliance sheets, which specify all the information to enable the scaffold contractor to erect the specified structure sort of properly. Now, as I say, there is a suite of documents. There is software to produce the compliance sheets, and then there's an operational guide, a design guide, and a user guide, which is basically for the scaffolders. Now, a compliance sheet is put together with various information. We have to look at the actual size and type of scaffolding. We have to look at the location. Obviously, you appreciate the wind loadings in London are about the half of what they are in Scotland. So, a scaffold in London probably doesn't need as much in it as a scaffold in Scotland. This is a compliance sheet. It shows you an image of the scaffold. Now, I've got to stress that is not a design drawing. It is just simply an image. You can see there, this particular scaffold has a bridge in it. It is an independent scaffold with a bridge. It's got a ladder tower on it. And you can see there where the actual tie positions need to be. The second part of the compliance sheet then carries all the information that the scaffold contractor needs to be able to erect it. So it is a list of basic things that, the base sizes, etc., etc., etc. And the third part of the sheet there is actually the bridge. It explains how the bridge needs to be constructed, laced and braced to make it safe. So, compliance sheet, as I said, contains all the information that's necessary to construct the scaffold. It covers the construction requirements, the key dimensions, the base sizes, lift heights, the number of boarded lifts, the allowable imposed loading, if cladding is permitted, for example, the tie details, add-on features, and the maximum leg loadings. Now, at the bottom of the sheet, you can see there is a series of badges, as we call them. Now that is the key information, and it's the key information that the client really needs to know. It tells him basically, the tie load, So, you know, if we're tying to a building or structure, you know, what extra load is the scaffold going to put onto it? And it shows you the maximum leg load for the foundations, so that we can ensure that they're obviously adequate. As I said, it covers a range of commonly used scaffolds, and this is what the range is really. So this is probably sort of 75–80% of all scaffolds that are erected probably fall into these categories. So the independent tied scaffolds up to 3-inch sideboards, part-boarded independent scaffolds, bridging in independence, put-log scaffolds, internal and external birdcage scaffolds, static and mobile towers, tied towers, lift shaft towers, loading bays, that's with and without prefabricated beams in them, and chimney scaffolds. So they, as I say, they cover probably most of the scaffolds that are erected. But the sort of bottom line to all this is that every scaffold should either have an applicable TG20 compliance sheet or a bespoke design drawing. It's as simple as that. And that is the law, basically, as we've seen. When we come to system scaffolding, that's slightly different because it's not covered in the TG20 user guide, e-guide. So that scaffolds erected to a particular system must be constructed in compliance with the manufacturer's user manual. Now, the problem with that is that what we usually find is the scaffold contractor will confirm that yes, it's constructed the manufacturer's manual, and maybe even give you as the client, let's say, a copy of the manual. But what they've got to do is a little bit more than that. They've got to actually verify the compliance. They've got to say how it complies, which section of the manual does it comply to, and demonstrate how it is actually compliant. Or they need to have a bespoke design for it. Right, we'll look at the second category, which is the scaffolder safe system of work. So this is to sort of ensure that the scaffold is constructed in a safe manner. We have a document called SG4, which is Preventing Falls in Scaffolding Operation, and it basically provides details of the scaffolder's safe system of work when he's working at height. I'm sure you know that the work at height regulations specify a hierarchy of risk. So first of all, avoid working at height if it's reasonably practicable. If it's not, then you must stop objects and people from falling. And if that's not reasonably practicable, then mitigate where the risk of falls remains, minimize the distance and consequences of the fall. Now, safety harnesses provide the lowest level of protection at all times, and collective measures must have a priority. Unfortunately, with scaffolding, we have to rely on safety harnesses at certain times because there's literally no other means of we're actually erecting the access, so it's not possible to do anything when we first sort of start the scaffold. The basic principle of SG4 is that scaffolders must establish a safe zone as a priority. So a safe zone consists of a fully boarded platform with a single guardrail fitted on all sides where there's a risk of a fall. Single guardrails should be erected and left in place for the life of the scaffold, so it's there for the dismantling as well. Now, when a scaffolder is within that safe zone, it is acceptable for him to unclip his harness and move about within that section. However, there are situations where he's still at risk of a fall. So there are certain instances where he still has to be clipped on. For example, the diagram there on the left, when he's working below the guardrail, he has to bend down below the guardrail to fit the braces and various other things. So he has to clip on for that. When he's fixing advanced guardrails, and I'll come on to advanced guardrails shortly, and when he's transferring boards, because when he's transferring boards from one level to another, he's creating a hole in the platform for himself. Now, it's not permitted to climb the scaffold via the braces, the tubes. The scaffolders must use ladders to climb at all times. They've got to be sort of tied or footed to make sure that they're safe. It's not permitted to stand on scaffold tubes or beams at any time. Scaffolders must sort of place scaffold boards and stand on them so they've got a firm platform. There's one exception to that, and that's when erecting slung scaffolds, where it's not actually possible to fit the boards before you've actually fitted the structure. So that's by use of inertia reel blocks, basically. It's quite a difficult job, which if you've been involved, I'm sure you understand. All lifts need to be boarded out from below, so that there's a platform ready to go to stand on when you get up to that level. All boards must be correctly supported with no trap ends. Working platforms should be fully boarded. Slight exception to that is if you can leave one board out in certain circumstances, if you need to be able to clip the lanyard hook to the ledger below. A single guardrail should then be fitted to provide the edge protection. And in most cases, the guardrails can be fitted before access is gained to the platform. So how do we do that? Essentially, we've got various methods. So again, from left to right there, we've got a piece of equipment called Scaffolder Steps. And what these are, they're just small step ladders with a platform on top. Clip those to the scaffolding guardrail, and then that gives access for the scaffolder to stand on that to erect the guardrail for the next level. So again, as I say, when we've boarded out that level and stand on it, we've actually got a guardrail there waiting for us. Next method is use a short lift system. So in effect, we just erect the scaffold in 1 meter lifts instead of 2. A little bit more work, but that's particularly useful when we erecting system scaffolds, because obviously it's not a big deal to just clip an extra lift in, so to speak. Or the third method is using advanced guardrails. Now, we can do this in various ways. For example, we build a goal post, and then we slide that goal post up to the next level. So again, once we've boarded out that next level, there is a guardrail there ready for us. The other method is we actually we actually fit the advanced guardrail, get it put onto the platform, and we sort of slide it out in front of us and fix it off as we go, standing behind what we've already got, so to speak. Some examples where additional measures are required for a safe zone. Cantilevers and truss outs, we basically build the goal post, but build it horizontally rather than vertically, and then say push it out into position so it's there ready for when the platform's boarded. Prefabricated beams, in most cases we can actually erect a platform. It's not a full platform, as you can see there. Unfortunately, it's a little bit obstructed, but it provides the scaffolders with a fair bit of platform to stand on. They're not standing on tubes, and the guardrails again we can sort of erect in front of us basically as we go. Bird cages, particularly difficult because we've got a lot of area there, but we build it with basically with sort of wells in the middle, such that the scaffolders can gain access to every standard position for erecting the next lift. Dismantling, it's basically a case of reversing the erection process. Scaffolders work along the elevation, removing the single guardrail and then lowering the boards from that section. And they must not remove the guardrail, and then start removing the boards. As I say, it's done progressively along. So the scaffolders work back towards the ladder bay, so they can climb down the ladder, you know, safely, and then continue on the next lift. The law requires that when working at height, we must have a rescue plan. I'm sure you understand that there are health risks associated with anybody that is suspended in a harness when they've fallen for any length of time. So therefore, an adequate plan must be in place for every scaffolding operation where fall arrest equipment is used. And this plan must be detailed and, you know, on or certainly with the risk assessment, and it should be available before we start work. We don't want actually someone to fall and then have to think, now how the hell are we going to get him back? You know, it should be all there. Everything should be planned before we actually get to that position. The rescue plan should consider the method of rescue, and this may vary dependent on the type and the configuration of the scaffold, and it should consider the action to be taken once the individual has been rescued. Again, you know, he may need first aid or even more, you know, depending on how badly he's been injured. Types of rescue equipment that's available. This is just some examples. The one on the left there is a piece of kit where you've got an extendable pole that you can actually clip onto the man's harness. Bearing in mind the man will probably be beneath the feet of the rescuers. So you clip that onto his harness and you can actually pull him up or even let him down, to be honest. The second piece is a piece of equipment that similar sort of thing, clip it onto his harness, but you then let him down slowly, because usually if someone has fallen, you want him down on the ground, not back up on the scaffold, but that's not always possible depending on the height. And the third bit is just simply an inertia reel block with a retrieval device on it, which he must be clipped onto when he starts erecting. But heaven forbid he falls, you can actually just wind him back onto the safe platform. Right. So the third sort of thing that you really need to ensure safe scaffolding is a competent workforce. So how do we do that? How do we know that the workforce is competent? Well, there is only one scaffolders training record scheme. This is CISRS, Construction Industry Scaffolders Record Scheme, and there on the right is a flow diagram of how the training sort of has to take place. It is quite a complex, no, not complex is the wrong word, quite a comprehensive system of training. Appreciate that you won't be able to see the details on the slide, but hopefully we'll be able to provide a copy of the slides for you if you want more detail afterwards. But to summarise that, what happens with scaffolders training is, first of all, an operative can apply for a COTS card. Now, this is a labourer's card, basically. It involves a short training course. I'll go into what's involved with the training course in a second, but he then needs to work, you know, as a labourer, learning the trade of various things for at least 6 months. And at that stage, he can then take his Scaffolder Part 1 course, and he receives a trainee card. He then can actually work on the scaffold. He has to work at least 6 months. But during that time, he has to complete an MVQ, which it does actually record the types of structure that he's worked on. He then can take his Scaffolder Part 2 course, and he then receives his scaffolder card. He can erect certain types of scaffolds. 12 months, again, experience and MVQ. And he can actually sit his advanced course. He then has to again provide 6 months more experience and complete NVQ before he gets his advanced course. Now, if you add all of those up, it comes to 2.5 years. But what we find is it probably takes a lot longer than that in practice, because those NVQ periods, as I say, need to include certain types of scaffolds. And if they don't just crop up within that period, obviously, scaffolders have got to wait until they do, to actually complete it. So we're talking probably a minimum of 3.5, sometimes 4 years to get from labourer to advanced scaffolder. Now, looking at the cards, as I say, the COTS card, the labourer's card, the course involves general health and safety, manual handling, site transport, loading and unloading, scaffolding terminology, servicing of equipment, lifting with gym wheel and rope, CITB, health, safety and environment test. So once you've got that, he gets his labourer's card. Again, his 6 months experience, and he can then take his Part 2 course. And as I say, he's basically a trainee scaffolder. At this stage, he shouldn't undertake any scaffolding activities unless he's under direct supervision of a qualified scaffolder. So he can work on the scaffolding, but he shouldn't then be taking anything sort of on his own. He shouldn't be sort of allowed to work at height unless he's under supervision. Once he's taken his sort of Part 2 course, he then receives his scaffolding card. So he's a qualified scaffolder in theory, and these are the types of scaffolds which he is then allowed to construct. I'm not saying himself, but as part of a team. But he doesn't need to have direct supervision all the time now. Now, I'm not going to go through that list again. That sort of list will be on the information that should be available after the presentation. But they are the list of and types of scaffolds that he can actually construct. It's also worth saying at this stage that when he completes the course successfully and receives the card, it is considered that he is then competent to inspect scaffolds. Now, it's not quite as simple as that. Again, I'll go into more detail, but we very often get basic scaffolders that will be sort of signing off these types of scaffolds, and that's absolutely fine. When he's received his advanced card, then the sort of list of scaffolds that he's considered competent to construct and dismantle sort of goes up, and that's another list which you say I'll not bore you with going through the list, but that basically is the detail. Further training, as I said before, scaffolders, basic and advanced scaffolders, are considered competent to inspect the types of scaffolds that they've been trained for. Now, there's a slight proviso to that, in that the employer must also assess the competence and say, yes, he is competent to do that. From obviously his experience, and make sure that the scaffolder knows what he's doing, in effect. But as a sort of an added sort of insurance, really, there are basic inspection courses and advanced inspection courses, which gives the scaffolder another qualification. And some clients insist on this, some don't. But as I say, it just gives you an added. The course goes into probably a bit more detail than the scaffolder courses, and so as I say, they can actually it gives a bit more sort of insurance on that. Also, we've talked about system scaffolds. We often get scaffolders that say, I've been scaffolding 30 years, you can't tell me how to erect a system scaffold. Well, I'm afraid that's not correct. There's a lot of different details with system scaffolds, and every type of system scaffold is slightly different. So it needs to be, he needs to be trained on the type of system that he's actually constructing. So, for example, there's cut-lock layer, hacking, quick stage, there's various others, but he needs, the scaffolder then gets his card endorsed to say that he has actually been instructed on the on that particular system. And essentially that's it. So any questions? So if I can hand back over to Shanika.
Hello. Are you ready for questions?
Yes, I am. Yes.
Okay. The first one is from Jason. Are the cards under the CSC's scheme, as we have professional cards under it, and it seems scaffolders have their own scaffolds record cards under the scheme?
Could you just repeat the first bit of that? Are the cards under?
Are the cards under the CSCS scheme?
No, they're not. CSCS scheme is a separate system that are run by another authority, basically. Not to say that the CS there's anything wrong with that scheme, but it's not as detailed as CISRS scheme for scaffolders. So as I say, basically the answer is you'll find that most scaffolders are registered to the CISRS and not the CSCS.
Thank you. The next one is from Tim. From a security and trespass viewpoint, can you expand on the NASC's view, please?
Well, the NASC duties really, as I say, we just simply provide guidance. So within our guidance, there is details of say security, how you protect the scaffold. Obviously, every employer has responsibilities, and if the scaffold is sort of exposed where someone could get onto it, basically, members of the public or whatever, obviously there has to be certain what can I say, parameters, certain things that are done to stop the members of the public getting on or people getting into the site, etc., etc. That is within our other guidance. There's various methods. For example, sometimes it's just simply a matter of removing the ladders, or putting ladder guards on so that they can't get there, etc., etc. So as I say, there is information available there regarding different methods.
Thank you. A question from Andrew. Are kickboards needed?
Yes.
Or can they be loose? How should they be secured?
But basically, working platforms, they also need to have double guardrails and toe boards, kickboards to stop anything being kicked off accidentally. Basically, the legal requirement is to use the kickboard should be a minimum of 150. But what we do is we just simply use scaffold boards. Scaffold boards are fixed to the standards to prevent them moving with proprietary type couplers, basically, that just clip them in position and prevent anything being kicked off.
Thank you. Are there any more questions? I think we've only got 3 there. Does anyone else have any questions? If not, thank you, Dennis, and thank you everyone for attending.
Yeah, no problem.
We've got 2 more actually.
All right, good.
Oh no, hey. Oh no, it's just someone saying thank you. That was interesting. Okay, no worries. Yeah, that's it.
Good. I'm going to say, if I can just say that if anyone has any queries on scaffolding or access at all, you can contact me on technical at nasc.org.uk or through our website. As I say, maybe the question hasn't come up yet, but I'm sort of, part of my role is to actually answer any queries that come up from people within the industry. So please feel free to contact me if there's something that crops up in the future.
Okie dokie. No, thank you for that. And thank you everyone for coming.
Yeah, thank you.